Fallout 4 players will remember lockpicking and terminal hacking as two distinct minigames. But in Starfield, the two activities have been merged into one hacking minigame. And this minigame revolves around the digipick. While exploring abandoned labs and offices, we can often find black cylindrical digipicks lying on tables or stuffed in lockers. Each of these is kind of like a bobby pin from Fallout 4, with some notable differences. We need digipicks to hack anything, from safes to doors to terminals. At the beginning of the game, we are only able to hack novice locks, and using a digipick dumps us into an interface that looks like this. In the middle of the screen, we see two inner rings, notched with holes, and one thinner outer ring with pins. To the right, we find a box that shows us how many rings of pins we have access to when trying to solve this puzzle, and it shows us how many digipicks we have in our inventory. The goal of this puzzle is to arrange the pins in such a way so that they can slot into the holes in the lower rings. We spin the pins until we find a spot where we think they fit, and then we press E to slot the pins. We don't actually use a digipick until we slot our first pins. Notice that when we started, we had 5 digipicks, and only after slotting our first pins do we remove a digipick. Now, we have 4 left. After using the first set of pins, it disappears from the box to the right. We now have to complete the puzzle by only using the pins available in these 3 final rings. This can be a problem because sometimes the rings with pins can work on multiple of the rings with slots. Oftentimes, to solve each ring, we have to combine pins in a way to complete all of the slots. In many cases, a ring with pins could be used on multiple of the rings with slots, but it has to be used on a certain one. And if we use it on any of the other ones, we can no longer solve the puzzle unless we backtrack. Thankfully, in this situation, this novice lock was really easy, and I was simply able to go from ring to ring in order to solve the puzzle. However, most of these locks are not going to be that easy, and we don't have to use the rings of pins in order. In this example, I started to solve the puzzle and used my first digipick only to realize that I had made a mistake. At any point, and as long as we have digipicks in our inventory, we can use a digipick to undo our last move. Here I have 7 digipicks left. I want to undo my last move, and so I spend one to get that ring of pins back. We can then choose any of these rings of pins that we want to use. We don't have to go in order from left to right. We can pick any of these rings and then arrange them in a way that we think is going to work before actually slotting them into the holes. Now, at any time, we can back out by pressing Tab. However, doing so, we still lose any of the digipicks that we've spent trying to solve this puzzle. Notice in this example, I'm trying to back out with only 4 digipicks left in my inventory. However, we can always go back to it and try to solve it again. Notice that I still have 4 digipicks in my inventory, but the puzzle itself has reset. It's only after sinking the first circle of pins that I use my digipick to start solving this puzzle. Instead of working on the first ring of pins, finding the spot we like and sinking it and moving on, a better strategy is to try and figure out where all the pins go first before sinking them. That way we don't end up using pins that we need for a different ring and waste a bunch of digipicks by clicking undo to try again. In this example, I start by arranging the pins in the first ring with the 2 slots at the top of the top ring. It looks like this is where they would naturally go, but I don't sink them just yet. And it's a good thing I didn't, because I discover later that the other pins in the other rings aren't at the appropriate angles to get the others to work. So it turns out I have to use the 2 pins that were close to each other on the bottom ring. So arranging it in place for the bottom ring, we can switch to the second ring and find its spot for the top ring, then complete the top ring by using the pins in the third ring, and then using the last ring of pins to flesh out the bottom ring. Once we have every single slot for both rings accounted for with a pin, we can then sync them in order. Top ring first, and then the bottom ring to solve the puzzle. Now, so far we've only taken a look at novice locks, but like in Fallout, there are different difficulties of locks: novice, advanced, expert, and master. When we start the game, we can only use digipicks to hack novice locks. In order to pick advanced locks, we need rank 1 of the security skill. An advanced lock is very similar to a novice lock, only the pin and hole combinations are going to be a little bit more complex. In this example, we still only have 2 rings with slots that we have to solve, but now we have to solve the puzzle by using 6 rings of pins instead of 4. Rings of pins will be a bit more complex, sometimes having 4 pins that we'll have to find a spot for, whereas with novice locks, each of these rings can have no greater than 3 pins. Additionally, rank 1 of security is going to allow us to bank 2 auto attempts. While hacking a lock, we begin to fill an auto slot meter at the bottom of the screen. We see a blue bar circling around an auto slot button that grows longer each time we successfully hack a lock. Once the bar is full, we find an option to auto slot. Auto slotting just arranges the correct ring with pins above the appropriate slots. It doesn't sync them. After spending an auto slot, we should probably sync this immediately so that we don't mess it up. It doesn't solve the puzzle completely, so I think it's best to save an auto slot to use at the beginning of a really tricky one. Once the auto slot meter is full, it stays that way until we actually use the auto slot. However, with rank 1 of security, we can now bank 2 auto slots. Rank 2 of security fundamentally changes the way this minigame works. And honestly, when it comes to security, rank 2 is absolutely necessary. It not only gives us the ability to hack expert locks and allows us to bank 3 auto attempts, but the rings are now color-coded to show us which ring of pins works with which ring of slots. This makes all of the different locks infinitely easier to solve. Here we have an expert lock door. It's a bit more complicated than advanced. We now have 3 rings of slots and 9 rings of pins to choose from. Also, when we select a ring of pins, it will highlight the ring of slots that the ring of pins can work with in blue. We have the first ring of pins selected, but all 3 rings of slots are blue. That means this pin could work on anything here. But we don't want to use it right away because the information we're going to get from the other rings of pins later is going to help us deduce where this one is supposed to go. So let's walk through this expert lock together. Number 2 can only be used on the top ring. We see that the top ring is blue, so we know that this fits here. However, we don't know yet if we need to use it. It's possible that we'll find other ones here that can also only work for the top ring and are preferable to use. But for now, we'll try and find a good spot for it and decide later whether or not we need to use it. And here we go. This is the best fit. In fact, it is the only fit for this particular ring of pins. Now this one doesn't highlight any of the rings of slots. That means this one can't be used in the puzzle. This is actually good news because we can discard it. We now know not to make the mistake of using this anywhere in the puzzle. The 4th one can be used on all 3 because all 3 are blue. What I like to do is find the ones that can only be used for certain rings and solve them first so that we can have more flexibility using the ones that can be used on all rings later. So moving on to number 5, we see that works for the top and bottom. Number 6 can only work on the top. That's a lot like number 2. Both of these can only work on the top. So let's try and find a good spot for this one. Here we have a problem. This is the only place this one will fit, because we have to find a slot for all of the pins. And yet, if we put it there, it overlaps with this one. So now we know that we have to choose either number 2, whoops, and I accidentally sunk it there, let's undo, or number 5. So we need more information before we can choose either one. Number 7 can be used for any of them, so we'll save this for later. Number 8 can't be used for any, so we can cross this off. And number 9 can only be used for the top. But it's got 4 pins compared to the 3 from number 6 and the 3 from number 2. So it's going to be a more efficient use of our time to try and get this one to work. And sure enough, immediately we find a solution right here. so we can go to the other ones that only work for the top ring to see which one best fits. And there it is. It's number 6. By using number 6 and number 9, we solve the first ring. So that tells us that number 2 is an extra ring. We don't need to use it. It also tells us that these other pins that can be used for multiple rings should be used for the center and bottom rings instead. Let's work on this one, because now that we've solved the top ring, we know this one should be used for the middle ring, because the bottom ring isn't blue. And there we go. By placing it here, we solve 3 of the 4 holes in the middle ring. With only one left, we can feel safe to grab one of these singles and place it in the only remaining slot in the center ring. This leaves the bottom ring to go. And this is really easy. There are only 2 rings of pins left that can be used on the bottom ring. Now, they could have been used on all of the rings, because all of the rings are blue. But after having solved all of the other rings with the limitations that we have, we now know that these 2 have to be used for the bottom ring. So we'll put it in place, and then grab that one and put it in place, and now we can start syncing, starting with the top, moving on to the middle, and ending with the final ring.
How quickly can you get that done?
As you can see, unlocking rank 2 of security not only allows us to unlock expert locks, but makes the entire puzzle much easier to solve. The 3rd rank of security allows us to hack master level locks, and we can bank 4 auto slots. The 4th and final rank of security allows us to bank 5 auto slots, and we can spend a digipick to eliminate pins that aren't required to solve the puzzle. Master locks, which we can hack by unlocking rank 3 of security, is the most difficult kind of lock. It has 4 rings with slots and 12 rings of pins that we can choose between to solve the puzzle. Even with the color-coordinated system here, which greatly helps out, it's a long and tedious process to try and solve this without using any auto slots. I like to save my auto slots for master level locks that otherwise would just take a really long time. We can use an auto slot to fill out the first pins for the first ring, then by process of elimination figure the rest of that ring out, then use a new auto slot for the next ring, and so on to quickly get through those really difficult master locks. The rank 4 ability to spend a digipick to get rid of the rings with pins that aren't used in the puzzle is also best used on master locks. For the others, you might find 1 or 2 rings, maybe 3 that aren't used in the puzzle, but by the time you get to the final ring in a master level lock, you can have 6 rings with pins that are left over, costing you much more time to try and figure out which one to use. I think it's best to spend a digipick when first starting a master level lock to get rid of the rings with pins that aren't used in the puzzle, and then use auto slot as necessary to finish each ring. And there we are, a quick guide to hacking in Starfield. What are your thoughts on this new minigame? Do you find that hacking has become tedious and monotonous, or do you appreciate the level of challenge that this new system presents? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I publish new videos each and every week on my channel, so if you don't want to miss my next episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. If you have already, but you still feel like you're missing out on YouTube notifications, consider following me on Twitter at Oxhorn. I update Twitter manually with every new piece of content that I publish. I've got a brand new shirt in the shop. Why is it always mannequins? Celebrate your love or hatred towards mannequins with this brand new design that you can't find anywhere else. You can get this design on shirts in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes and in a wide array of colors. It comes on other products as well, like smartphone cases, pillows, posters, mugs, stickers, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in another way, consider becoming a patron on Patreon or a member here on YouTube. YouTube members get little badges that appear next to their names in the comment sections of my videos, and access to Ox emojis that they can use in my video comments and in the live chats of my live streams. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. with more Starfield videos. Okay, so this one is for the middle only. That's easy. That does everything but one. This is for all three. None. None. This is for all three, but I think we want to use it for that. Or rather, for that. For the middle. All right, so we've got the middle sorted. All three. This is for the top. Great. Makes it easy. So we just need one of those right here. That's got that sorted. So now we just need to do the bottom. And thankfully, this one is for the bottom. But now we need another. Perfect. Right there. So. Top. Middle. Bottom. And advanced AA-99. This gun sells really well.